almost all the areas are covered. Naturally, there will be one or two weak points. And if you have any doubts or clarifications or comments, everything, you are most welcome to add. And I'll be happy to answer if I know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Participants, if you have any questions, you can please unmute yourselves and you can ask the questions directly.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
Me, Vipro Pratibhas. I'm from Kolkata.
Yeah.
Sir, I'm from NUJS as well. I'm doing my master's there on international law itself. Sir, my question is all about the doctrine of Drago, which you had taught us. What are the three principles of doctrine of Drago? Could you please explain that, sir?
Yeah. See, in state responsibility, there are three theories today. Now, when I speak about the three theories, this is regarding the return of the amount that is being taken by way of loan by a particular state. Suppose, for example, in the event of difficulties, if a state approaches another state and asks for money, and how it should be returned, the question that came up. So, in the imperialistic age, there was a prime minister. He was known as Lord Palmerston. Lord Palmerston happened to be, remember, a great imperialist as well. And this person went to the extent of saying that money which is being given by the state of Great Britain or the loan that is being advanced to a state has to be returned. And if it is not returned, remember, first they will follow through diplomatic channel. And if no answer is received from the diplomatic channel, they may even take up arms. They will not hesitate to wage a war and annex the territory. That was the first theory. This is called as the Lord Palmerston theory. Now, the second theory happened to be Dr. Drago. Dr. Drago happened to be a foreign minister of the state of Argentina. What he was saying is annexing the territory for not giving the loan is not advisable under the present day international law. Now, first and foremost, these matters are to be sorted out only through negotiation. Negotiation is, remember, the first and foremost frontal approach that has to be followed by the states, both the giver as well as the lender. So in the negotiations, they may ask for time, or they may enter into another agreement, renew the agreement, wherein in the renewed agreement, they will have stated how it should be done. So in all circumstances, annexation or occupation or use of arms is not allowed to be done, was the approach of Dr. Drago in this case. Now the third approach is the present day approach. Under the present day international law, after the Charter of United Nations came into force, amount will have to be paid. The payment and the procedure of payment and the mode of payment is part of the agreement itself. So when money is given, it is being stated then and there how it should be paid. And if there is interest to that, how much interest has to be paid. All these things are being stated then and there. The matter ends there. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for the question, Mr. Vipro. Are there any further questions? Anybody, please, you can post your questions. Okay. There's one question from Miss Surekha. She's asking, her question is that how the enforcement of the decisions of International Court of Justice can happen, and what is the relevance of the statute of ICJ and UN Charter, especially Article 94?
Yeah, but I just intended to speak to you this issue. When the Charter of the United Nations was drafted, it came up for discussion. And when it came up for discussion, the drafters of the Charter of the United Nations were saying the statute should have a provision relating to the enforcement of the judgment of the ICJ. Now, under Article 94 of the Statute of the World Court, it is being stated that when the judgment is given, generally what happens is the court will insist that judgment has to be enforced by the parties. Suppose such a clause is not included before the matter is referred for a decision in the International Court of Justice between the parties naturally are to enforce the judgment under Article 94. Now, what does it say? Now, suppose, for example, in the event of a decision by the International Court of Justice and the non-enforcement of the judgment of the ICJ by one of the parties to the dispute, the other party can go to the International Court of Justice for its enforcement. Now, at that time, the International Court of Justice naturally will invoke the protection of the Security Council of the United Nations. So what I'm saying is, if the judgment of the ICJ is not enforced, the Security Council will come into the picture. And if the matter relates to international peace and security, naturally, it will harp upon the issue and see that the concerned recalcitrant state, who in the garb of seeking justice fails to enforce the judgment, will be made to enforce the judgment. That is what it is stated. Now, under the Charter of United Nations as well, you might be knowing the Security Council of United Nations is constituted only for the purpose of maintaining international peace and security. I have made the point very clear when I spoke to you. If the Security Council fails to enforce or fails to carry out its duties, the General Assembly can step in. That is where, in the certain expenses case, the International Court of Justice, in its advisory opinion, pointed out the primary responsibility of maintaining international peace and security rests with the Security Council, but not the exclusive responsibility. You are supposed to act. You are supposed to act for the simple reason you are appointed for that purpose. And if you fail to carry your duties, naturally, there will be another organ which will take up the responsibility, because it is composed of all the members of the United Nations, and they are competent and they are capable. This was the message that was sent. I just wanted to speak to you something about a particular Secretary General of the United Nations, a Swedish Secretary General, Dag Hammarskjöld. Now, this person was very powerful as Secretary General of the United Nations. He delivered a lecture at the University of Oxford. And in the lecture, Oxford lecture was very simple. He was just saying, I am waiting for the orders from the organs which are supposed to carry out the responsibility. And the organs are supposed to act. And if these organs fail to act, naturally, then I will presume that I am empowered to act by keeping the philosophy of the Charter in mind, and which I will do. This has happened just because before he traveled to Congo in 1966. Yes.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Ms. Rekha, for the question. The next question is from Mr. Rupaksh from ICFAI University, Dehradun. His question is related to international human rights issues. And the question is that India is a state party to a number of international treaties like ICCPR, but they have failed to implement these properly. The question is that what can be the remedies that can be used when any state does not follow the provisions of a ratified human rights convention?
Now, regarding the failure of a particular state to enforce the provisions of the human rights conventions, even after an act of ratification, is naturally, remember, left to the concerned state itself. I just intend to tell you, my professor, Professor R.P. Anand, who was advisor to the Secretary General of the United Nations on Law of the Sea in 1973-74, he used to tell, suppose, for example, a particular state is a recalcitrant state, and members of the international community as well as the United Nations, in spite of the letters that is being written, in spite of the request that is being made, remains recalcitrant. At that time, naturally, when such a member comes before the floor of the United Nations and addresses the members of the United Nations, other members walk out. And they don't want to listen to such people. You might be knowing years ago, when the state of Israel addressed the United Nations, hardly there were 6 members. This is how the members of the international community voiced together and showed their protest bluntly, saying that we are not interested to listen to you. First, adhere to the existing rules of international law. That is where shouting before the General Assembly of the United Nations is all the more required to bend the concerned state and accept the obligations. Now, in regard to other things, remember, there are, for example, there are many states who have become parties to the convention, and thereafter they take a religious route. And in our religion, it is not allowed, it cannot be done. And in circumstances such as this, remember, it is known to everybody, but nobody is going to pressurize them because it will take some years and the change has to take place within. And when changes take place within the concerned state, naturally they will abide by the respective human rights and other things. I just want to tell you one more thing. See, the drafting of the Civil and Political Rights Covenant had taken place and completed in 1952. But then in 1966, that means what? It took 14 years to bring it before the floor of the United Nations. So in 66 members were present at that time. And thereafterwards it was introduced and then discussion took place and thereafterwards they accepted it. But then to get 35 ratifications, it took, remember, another 10 years. So that means the very attitude as well as the performance of the states as regards human rights is very poor. Draft was ready in 1952. It was introduced in 1966, but then it was accepted with 35 ratifications in 1976. That is only 35. And thereafterwards, many states have signed. That means the attitude or the conduct is very poor. They need education. That is why they postpone. Now, for example, the state of United States boasts of everything, but the track record of the state of United States as regards human rights is very poor. This is one. I'm telling you, as regards human rights, means many other things are involved therein, because it has not ratified many of the environmental law conventions at all. And most of these environmental law connections are matters which come within the domestic jurisdiction of a state which relates to environment. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Any further questions that you may have, you can either put it on the chat or you can unmute yourself and you can ask the question directly from Dean, sir. Are there any questions, participants? There are no questions as such. If there's anything anybody wants to add on, any questions, any clarifications, if you may, please.
How many are there totally?
There are 17 people, sir, in the...
Each one of them can give their impression for
Yeah,
about 1 or 2 minutes.
There's one more question, sir. We can take up that and then we can do that.
Okay, fine, excellent.
Okay, this question is from Mr. Attar. His question is that if a treaty does not contain any provision relating to consequences of violation of the treaty, can a state party use the doctrine of state responsibility to claim compensation, etc.?
No, naturally it has to use. Suppose, for example, if the treaty does not provide any provision, that means if there is no provision, naturally the provisions which are in force relating to international law come into operation anywhere. That need not be spoken. I just told you when I spoke to you, source of international law, the general principles of law recognized by the civilized nations come into the picture. It has to be respected. You cannot just browbeat others saying that there is no provision under the treaty. Now that may have been a mistake made at the time of signing the treaty. But then, as far as possible, as citizens, as good citizens, world citizens, you have to reciprocate with the good intention. And it cannot be accepted for long.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Mr. Attar, for your question. There's another question from Miss Veena. Her question is that whether ADR method is an efficient method for settling international trade dispute.
Now, see, for example, under the WTO, it has not come into force in full swing. The idea is being mooted. But then how far it is going to succeed, only time will tell. But then change is the essence of life. Changes are required. That is why when in other places these things are done, why not in WTO dispute settlement mechanism? That is where the whole crux of the matter lies. Now, for example, when I speak about other important developments, for example, international trade disputes, you have what we call as the experts there, and their time, their availability. These are all things, remember, which matters, and it is very difficult for them. And there will be a delay in the settlement of disputes. So this is called as the appellate body. And in circumstances such as this, instead of waiting for the appellate body to take up the issue and decide the matter, why not refer the matter to mediation and settle the matter once and once for all, for the better of everyone, both the parties? That is the idea which is being mooted. How it is going to work out, we don't know.
Thank you, sir. So there's one more point that has been added by Ms. Surekha, which is related to the previous question. That is, what about Kulbhushan Jadhav case, and what about the decision of the court? Ma'am, Surekha ma'am, can you please elaborate your question? You can unmute yourself and elaborate the question, please.
Good afternoon, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes. Sir, my question is regarding Kulbhushan Jadhav case. Court has passed a decision. So my question is, the implementation of the decision is concerned. Till now, nothing has happened relating to this case. So what is the relevance of the decision of the court, sir, then?
Now, the pointed issue is, see, they have asked for a judgment only on a particular point. And only on that particular point, the International Court of Justice addressed the judgment. Other issues, the states that India and Pakistan will have to settle the matter. And you might be knowing, our people have taken a stand because talking to Pakistan is not going to serve any purpose anywhere. And we have been doing it in the last, remember, 50 years, and ultimately we have lost about 45,000 soldiers. So let them learn, and they cannot harm, since there is a decision of the International Court of Justice to that effect. So life has to be protected, and he should be given a free access to his family and others. So that is how the delay is taking place. But it will be resolved in favor of India. They can't do anything. This is a fact. Now, at least one human life of the 41,000, 45,000 soldiers will be protected. That is the advantage, nothing beyond.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Sir, one more question, sir, regarding Vijay Mallya too. Whether his asylum has ended, sir, there in England, whether his extradition proceedings have started? Regarding
see, the point is, issue is the court, whenever it gave a decision, this person, since he has a lot of money, he is appealing the matter. Now it is before a particular court of law, and that has to be, I think, the court of appeal. And the court of appeal has to decide the matter once and once for all. Thereafterwards, the government of India will make a move to bring him here for the sake of trial. Now, the government of India is all the more interested, and they have even submitted before the English court saying that in the event of bringing him, extraditing him, we will put him in such a place wherein he will be treated with dignity. All the facilities which he is enjoying will also be provided in the jail itself. This is what they have stated to convince them, because Mallya went to the extent of pointing out, if I go there, I will not be able to survive even for 10 days, because the treatment that is being meted to people who are inside the prison, inmates, is worse. This is all inhuman conditions and all, for which the government of India gave a reply and asked them, you can come back to India and just make an inspection and then go. He will be treated with respect, provided he has to fight the case himself.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So the next question is from Ms. Anita, who wants to know that if there are any other laws governing marine environment other than the law of the sea.
Now, see, I'm not able to conclusively say, but one important aspect you remember, under the conventional law of the sea, it is only to protect the marine environment and its species. But then there will be, and there are conventions which are being adopted for purpose of taking care of the entire resources. This is there. but I am not able to quote the agency which has done.
Okay. Thank you, sir. If there are any more questions, they can be please put or asked directly. Any of the participants can put forward the questions. So there are no more questions that are there in the chat box. If there's anybody who wants to ask a question, they can unmute themselves and ask the questions directly. Okay, there are no further questions, sir. As you had said, we can have like an interactive session where everybody can.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Each one of you can speak, whether you liked or disliked or whatever.
The participants can give their views about the course, about this session, whatever views you may have, you can please put forward.
Yeah.
First of all, I would like to thank you so much, sir, for taking up the initiative, wonderful initiative to teach us. So this is really so very grateful, and we are really very grateful to you. And we have really learned a lot from it. Actually, sir, myself, I got the link of this course from Shantini Bakshi ma'am. Yes, Shantini ma'am was there at your university some years back. So I'm a student of her. Anyways, and at the time when she was in Calcutta University, sir. So she had given me this opportunity to link with you, sir. So that is, it's a very great thing that I've achieved, I must say. And whenever I'll have any kind of a problem on international law, I'll be reviewing the lectures once again so that it becomes easy for me to understand the entire question. It's so kind of you. I really can't thank you enough. So for the wonderful initiative that you have taken up, sir. Thank you so much.
See, I just intend to give a reply. Because as the Vice Chancellor of University and as the Dean of the Bangalore University, I know in most of the colleges, the teachers, I'm not making a general call. So, it is not, teaching is not up to the mark, especially international law.
Exactly. Sir.
See, we cannot blame the teachers also because they are not trained for it. And they just teach any other subject, like just like teaching any other subject, they go to the class and teach and come. So at times, now when we go to the class and hear them, and we feel that is not the international law. International law is such a wonderful subject, and it has so much. Remember, Mr. Bishop, an authority who wrote on cases in international law, once in one of his books points out that the learning of international law makes you a good world citizen. You get to know almost all the developments which are taking place throughout the world. That helps you, gives you so much of knowledge. That is why you become a world citizen. And that way it is not taught in the classroom. And for which you require exposure. And you are to be trained by a good teacher. That is where I thought, since I have good exposure in Bahrain, as an advisor, application of international law at the municipal level, since I had studied for 5 years in JNU, and MPhil as well as PhD, and learned under the best professors in the world, Professor Rahmatullah Khan as well as Professor R.P. Anand, and later by Professor B.S. Chimney and Professor Tyagi and others. So why not we impart it? Ultimately, remember, you, the younger generation, should know what is what, and they should get the benefit. And it should not die with the person who knows it, who has read it, and it has to be communicated. And there is no selfishness in this. What is being given to you has to be shared with others. These lectures, remember, you are the torch bearers. So to see that these lectures go to everyone, whoever a student of law, whoever studies international law, he should be able to go through, listen, and enjoy it. And all the lectures are enjoying it. It's not that tough. Many people think that international law is the toughest subject. It's not that. International law is a wonderful subject provided you have a wonderful reading capacity. And you should have the capacity to read, you have the capacity to digest, and you should have the capacity to articulate. Only the subject has a charming.
Exactly, sir. So
Yeah.
great of you, sir. So great of you.
Thank you.
And this thing is that, sir, right now in any case also we are having a very good professor as well. We are having T.N. Sudhakar, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sir. But the thing is that we are not so very regular at his class.
I
But
know.
actually we don't. Actually, I should say very honestly to you, sir. I should say very honestly to you, sir, that actually it's quite very monotonous to attend. So I found your lecture so very interesting, and the way you were teaching, that this is so great of you, sir. I would like to.
See, every principle of a subject which is evolved through centuries is decided by a case law. And that case, the concerned teacher should know threadbare. And it has to be put in the classroom, and one by one, remember, at its fingertips, it has to be analyzed and put before the students. Then only it will be interesting. That is why when I spoke to you about the International Court of Justice, I made a mention the development of international law by the International Court of Justice. And so that you understand the principle, you know the facts of the case, how it is being applied, how it is being viewed. So always remember, for example, when we speak about the Security Council, always used to say it is the Security Council only decides matters pertaining to peace and security. Other bodies cannot interfere with. Yes, the task is given to you, but then if you fail, you mean the others should sleep? A world body, it cannot sleep because it has 194 members today. And they can take up the responsibility, and they are empowered to appoint a United Nations peacekeeping force. This is what the International Court of Justice said. And these are to be known. And the art of conveying is an art in itself. Yeah.
Absolutely, sir.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah.
So exactly, the art of a teacher is rightly to communicate with the students to the best possible extent, so that the students also get to know and learn the things, sir, which I've really seen in you. I must admit it. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Who else?
Thank you, Mr. Pipro. It was great hearing from you. And
Nitika, sorry to interrupt you for a while. I must
Yes.
say that I will see Sir, and I'll be definitely coming to CMI University very soon, only after when I'm very capable enough. So I'll definitely be turning up to your university. I've hopefully look forward to that.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're most welcome, and we'll also look forward to have you here in the university campus. Thank you. If Anita ma'am, I request Anita ma'am or Atar sir or anyone else, any of the participants who would like to share their experience, any views, suggestions that you may have about the international course.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, this is Sureka from Udupi, Vaikunta Baliga College of Law. Sir, actually, all the sessions were very interesting in such a way that actually I was waiting for a link to open and listen the same whenever I get a time. It is like a story for me. It is not an international law. It is a story relating to international law. Being a teacher of this international law, whenever I meet the children inside the classroom, I used to draw a picture on the blackboard by saying that it may be I am alone case or a Packwood Habana case or a Caroline case. It is like it is a story relating to behind this international law, and even the dancing officials case. All cases are very fascinating and interesting, and also the rules were laid out. But the after hearing your lecture, I come to know that in what way, in other way, we can put forward our own views in such a sir, it is not a session, it is actually it is a story of international law. Sir, being a international law student, yes, being in this particular profession, I have taken up this particular subject, but somewhere even I felt that this is not the what I want some tutor. I want someone to, yes, this is the way you have to go ahead. And at the same time, sir, to be honest, in order to know much more about international, I have taken ICJ as my research. I mean, for a PhD, sir. I'm pursuing my PhD on ICJ, that is critical enforcement of the decisions of the ICJ. My intention is only to learn what actually this international law. It is very fascinating. So after hearing your lecture, sir, it is like a chronological order. That is what is there in the syllabus, and what is actually law of the peace, and from the beginning to end. So it is. Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful thoughts. And it is a forum where, like me, there are many more have got benefited because of your, I mean, the lecture, sir. Thank you so much, sir. It is. I keep it as treasury for me. It is not. I told you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. There is no words.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, madam. One thing I just want to add
Yes,
here.
yes, sir.
See, the art of teaching is
Yes, sir.
before you go to the class,
Yes,
you
sir.
have to imagine yourself. If I put this way, whether it will be liked.
Yes,
Then
sir.
you get the answer no. So, in what way, in what approach, when it is put, how the students like is the first exercise which a teacher should do.
Yes, sir.
When you do that,
Yes,
teachers,
sir.
all the students will like you. This is what I have done. How it should be true. For example,
Yes, sir.
you must have heard about the United Nations.
Yes, sir.
When you hear the United Nations, remember you have to start whether whether an international organization was there or not, and if such an organization was not there, is it the first attempt?
Yes,
And
sir.
in the first attempt, if it is the League of Nations, what it has done, who are the people who are involved, and why did it fail? Then you come to the United Nations and history, all of them. So your mind now, it is called as in the research methodology, reflective thinking. If you present in a particular way, then only it will be liked. Otherwise, it will not be. Wherein at least 80% of the students will be in a position to understand a bit of international law. That is why I choose this method. And there are several methods for several subjects. For international law, this is supposed to be the best method.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I request Ms. Jayashree to please put forward your views, any suggestions, any criticisms also are most welcome if you may have any. Ms. Jayashree, would you like to share something with us?
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Sir, I'm a student of CMR University, CMR Law School itself, sir. So I think there's a lot of disturbance from my end. So as you could tell, so thank you so much, sir, because we felt like we had missed international law. Because of last year, we didn't have that many classes because of COVID-19, and it was very difficult to conduct classes. So the course that you had provided, it is very very helpful for students who will be writing the exams soon, sir, on the upcoming exam. So I will not extend further because of the disturbance, but I just wanted to ask a general question. If there are any other books that we can refer from apart from academic books, sir, like any extra reading that we can do, that we would suggest, sir?
Yeah, I can tell you. See, for example, there are several books like that. For example, there is a person by name James Schlesinger. The name of the book is 1000 Days. And you have, for example, in India, there is a journalist by name Durgadas. And this person has written a book on India from Curzon to Nehru and after. India from Curzon to Nehru and after. Now you have plenty of books like this. And then we have another person, Witness to an Era, which is being written by an editor of the Indian Express. Now, as and when you get time, you have to read these things, because when you speak, when you speak and pursue the policies of the government, these books are very much essential and they give a good standing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rupaksh, would you like to put forth your opinion or suggestions, if any?
Good afternoon, sir and all. I'm working as a faculty in ICFAI Law School, Dehradun. Sir, first of all, I would like to express my thanks to you and gratitude that you have provided us this platform to learn international law. I'm teaching international law, public international law, and to the students. But one point which always come in my mind is related to that some questions that I am not able to deal with because books are silent on some practical issues. After attending your sessions, I was able to understand that what can be the practical process in the different United Nations organs, and I was able to implement that. So thank you so much, sir, for that sessions and providing us that platform to increase knowledge in this particular field.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rupaksh. Miss Veena, would you like to put forth something?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, sir. I know sir almost like more than a decade, and I'm happy to share that he is my guru or mentor or whatever. And in toto, no words to express about his presentation or interpretation or his articulation. And thank you so much for your indeed informative session, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Miss Veena, would you like to say something? Okay. Vidya, ma'am, would you like to say something? Vidya Selvamani, ma'am, if you would like to add something, if you'd like to say something about the session, about the course.
Voice.
Ma'am, you're on mute. You're still on mute, ma'am. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you now.
So, thank you very much, sir, for giving us this wonderful session. Mitika, just give me 2 minutes. I will just log out of that and come on.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Yes, please. Going back to Miss Anita, ma'am, would you like to say something?
Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good afternoon, ma'am, and good afternoon, sir. I don't know from where to start and where to end. It was from the beginning that you have your lectures. It has come out on a series, and the course has been very informative. To be to the subject you have to speak, it is very in-depth, sir, because it has come in a series-wise. And as Sureka ma'am was saying, what she shared, she said that it was more like a classroom for us. We needed some tutor at this point of time, especially when this pandemic situation. Hearing such kind of lectures from you and about the international law, it was really very informative session. We would like to put forth to you saying that this sessions which you had sent us the information in mail has been sent and shared to my friends and other colleagues also, and also they have viewed their expression saying that it was very good informative sessions, and I'm very thankful to you, and we look forward for more sessions like this, sir, from the institute and yourself once again, sir, and thank you once again. Thank you, ma'am.
Mitika, can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah. You can hear me.
Good evening. Yes, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, thank you very much for a very, very interactive and good lecture. this lectures has definitely helped us to teach with confidence public international law. When we were giving some mood problems of international law, it was so difficult to make the students understand how the hierarchy of the from UN, how does it go to WTO, what's the role and what's the role of treaties, what does treaty actually do in our country. So your lectures were so helpful. So it will definitely benefit number of students, sir, if it's shared to a lot of other students. And the most important thing which I felt was the hierarchy which was shared. What role does India play in an international forum? That was very useful, and your presentation, your lectures were very precise, to the point, and we have learned much from that, sir. And thank you once again for your wonderful presentation, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anybody else? If I've missed out someone who would like to add something, Miss Malvika, would you like to add something? Would you like to give your opinion about the session, about the course?
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Malvika. I'm from the 5th year BA LLB in CMR Law School.
Okay.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay. So, sir, it's not the first time that I've heard your lecture on international law. I also had an opportunity to hear before on sources of international law. It's always amused me how your knowledge on the sources of international law, even especially when you talk about customary laws and how customs has a great influence on the evolvement of international law and the cases regarding the same. It always takes us back to the historical journey of the same, and it's such a surreal experience to feel or picture yourself being there and understand as to how these customs have shaped current international law. So it's been such an interesting experience. Like my classmate Jayashree mentioned, that we weren't able to really get international law classes due to COVID-19. So this was really a great opportunity for us. Thank you so much, sir. And definitely this has increased our interest in the field of international law. Thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing more from you, sir. Thank you.
See,
Thank you.
I just want to tell you, I am only the person who used to prepare and come and speak. But there are lots of people who are behind the curtain. And the first person is Professor Srinidhi of the CMR Law School. Then we have Mitike Shivasava. And then we have Shivani and a host of others. All these people are the ones who prepared everything and then afterwards used to record and then put it. And my role is only just sitting and speaking for an hour and going. And I should thank personally all of them.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for this.
Yeah.
If there's anybody else who would want to add something, please you may, or we can just wind up the session. I hope I haven't missed anybody on the list. Yeah. Yes,
if you
please.
do not mind, could you also give us an insight regarding as to how the exams are going to be conducted for the certification, or things more about that, like as to how it will be conducted?
The exam will be conducted online. It will be in the form of a multi-choice question paper. It will consist of 25 questions. Further details about the question pattern and how it is, or on the platform on which it will be conducted, it will be mailed to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. We can wind up the session. It was a great session. It was great talking to all of you. And it was delightful hearing all your opinions. Thankfully, everything's all positive. And I hope online video lectures and this session has been enriching for all of you. And I wish you a very best of luck for your upcoming exam. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for this session. Thank you for giving us so much time. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone.